Welcome to Pop Americana. I am your host, Ryan Ashley Wall, and joining me tonight is Byron Lafayette.
How's it going, guys? Tried to wave and I suddenly was like blinking in and out.
Nice invisible wave.
Uh,
I can't even go back far enough, can I?
yeah.
Anyway, we are here to talk about part 3 of what I assume will be 4, but I'm not entirely sure, of The Lord of the Rings Return of the King. It's a very long movie. We've been doing a scene-by-scene analysis. If you're watching it just now in the third part, I recommend you stop this video and view the playlist this is in and start with the first, because otherwise this is just nonsense. In fact, start with the first in the entire playlist for part 1 of the Fellowship of the Ring and work your way here. Now, of course, because we're doing a scene-by-scene analysis, this is wall-to-wall spoilers. We will spare nothing. We're in the Return of the King, so there is nothing off limits. We may reference the very end of the movie. We may reference anything from the Fellowship of the Two Towers, and Lord knows we may reference The Hobbit. I'm not sure. But this is your warning, fair and clear. If you haven't seen these films, you owe it to yourself to go see these first anyway, but you've been warned. On that note, let's get some clerical business out of the way first. Please be sure to like, subscribe, share, click the notification bell. Look, we're going to do a lot of analysis, scene by scene. We're not geniuses. Well, I'm a genius, but the bottom line is we're not going to get everything. It's just not possible. These films are too deep. There's too much going on. We're going to miss some things, but that's where you come in, because I like to view the comment section as co-content creating. Give us your thoughts, your analysis, and those important things we've missed, share it below. It really helps. I would really appreciate it for the algorithm, but most importantly, I just want to hear from you. All right, before we get into our coverage of the film itself, Byron, why don't you tell us what you're doing online?
Yeah, so I have a podcast called Under the Lens with Byron Lafayette. We do interviews, movie reviews, discussions of films. Pretty much anything related to pop culture is fair game when it comes to the podcast. And even then, sometimes we'll even go to the fringes of pop culture if it's something that I find interesting that I think you will as well. I am coming back from a bit of a break on it, but I have a couple of episodes that I'm going to be releasing in the next week or so. So definitely be checking it out. We're on all of the major platforms, so pretty much anything. And also, I've been working on a new project too of a association called the Independent Critics of America, which is a association that just launched, and Ryan is actually a member of that. And it's made up of independent critics from across the country who are all basically networking together and sharing their reviews. And it's pretty cool. So you can look it up on indiecriticsofamerica.org. And if you're a critic yourself and you want to join, feel free to click that join button and apply.
Absolutely. And in case you missed it, we will have the link in the show notes. So that's that. Yeah, like Byron said, Pop Americana is a part of it. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be great. One last thing, I lied. One last thing before we get into our analysis proper. I did want to apologize for the long absence in between parts 2 and 3 here. Been very busy. We had Easter, which was an expected break, and then we had some unexpected sickness and some other things going on. But here we are. We're back at it again. And after Return of the King, our next film to cover will not be a scene-by-scene analysis, but will just be a comprehensive look at Schindler's List. And on the Pop Americana YouTube page here, if you go to the stage settings, you can see I've actually already released the stage setting for Schindler's List to hype you up for that. But for now, let's stay focused on Lord of the Rings Return of the King. All right, if you have been following the coverage, we stopped last time at the disc break for the Blu-ray versions, or up to Blu-ray versions of the extended edition. So if you're familiar with that, what that means is we would be coming back on a scene called the Corsairs of Umbar, which is kind of self-explanatory. This scene is not in the theatrical cut. So if you're watching the theatrical cut, the chapter break is different. In fact, in the theatrical cut, there are no breaks in the DVD or Blu-ray. So I digress. I don't want to miss anything here, though, so I just want to go over this scene real quick. It's not much special except moving the plot along, which is probably why it was cut. But it starts with Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli standing alone on the shores of the Anduin River, and the ships that we've seen much ballyhooed throughout the film, the Corsairs of Umbar, sailing towards Gondor, approach, and Aragorn tells them to halt and that they can go no forward, which is humorous to them coming from one guy with an elf and a dwarf as backup. And they say, "Who are you to deny us passage?" And a bit of comic relief here, where Aragorn tells Legolas to fire a warning shot past the bosun's ear, and Gimli purposely notches Legolas's bow so that instead of going past him, it shoots him directly in the heart. And Gimli says, "Well, you've been warned, prepare to be boarded," which they find, again, humorous, coming from three little guys on the shores of the Anduin. And amongst these Corsairs are several people involved in the production, including one Peter Jackson, the director, is one of our pirates here. And Aragorn answers their threat with, they ask, you and whose army for boarding? And Aragorn, cheesy one-liner, says, "This army," and emerging from the mountain is just a swarm of ghostly figures overwhelming the crew. And actually, there's a funny bit in the appendices to this film where, like, you see their reactions of shock and horror. They're not actually shock and horror. It's just like the magic of movies. In this scene in particular, Peter Jackson, look at him. The man is trying his hardest not to laugh. He's just got big, wide mouth open, like, oh no. So it's funny. It's a great little cameo. Peter Jackson has one in every film. This is his. He just gets killed by the army of the dead. It's a neat scene, but ultimately it doesn't do much except tell us that Aragorn and company have intercepted those ships. And honestly, if I may sing the praises of the theatrical cut here, which is not something we do often, by not having this scene, and the last bit we saw was the King of the Dead saying, "We fight," or actually, no, that wasn't even in there. The last, I think, in the extended edition is Aragorn calling them to fulfill their oath. And then we don't see Aragorn and company again until they're jumping off of those ships, which we assume are enemy reinforcements. So one minor thing in favor of the theatrical cut is by cutting all that connective tissue, it preserves a surprise, like, oh, this sucks. After all this, we get another enemy reinforcements and we lose anyway. And nope. Aragorn and company are there with the army of the dead. The extended edition does away with that surprise, but I don't really think it was that big of a surprise anyway. Like, it would be a huge sin for Aragorn and company to not be involved in this battle at all. So that's my take on the scene. And Byron, we're going to move into territory you're actually familiar with. There's not much to say about that scene other than what I've already said. So we're going to move on to Shelob's Lair, in which there is a lot to say. As an editorial decision, because I can't remember exactly which beats fall into what, because there's a lot of jumping in and out of this setting, we're just going to go cover from Frodo and Gollum entering the thing to Sam absolutely tearing Shelob to pieces. So let's treat this as if that's all one block. I know that's jumping around a bit, but we'll go from there.
I think that flows the best, probably.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think you can do the Tower of Cirith separate and the trek through Mordor separate. That's fine. But this whole bit, like, I would hate to be jumping back from the battle to this, to the battle. Like, it's great to watch, but in terms of discussing, that sounds like a nightmare. So, yeah, this setting is creepy. I really like this scene. I remember my first time seeing this film. I had read the books at this point, and in the books, we're still in the Two Towers with Frodo and Sam, because that book ends on the cliffhanger of Frodo being captured but still alive, which is a cool cliffhanger for a book, but makes a mess of the timeline for the movies. So they decided to instead shift the timeline. Well, not shift the timeline, shift the experience so that it's in time. You know, what's happening for Frodo and Sam is happening at the same time as it's happening for Merry and Pippin or Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, so that by the time we get to the ring being destroyed, it's not like we're having to wait for Frodo and Sam's story to catch up to that. So, yeah, I think it was a good editorial decision to do that, but I was profoundly disappointed that this scene was not in the Two Towers at first, because this sequence of events might be a bit of my favorite stuff from Tolkien, and it's good here. It's really, really good, guys. What do you think, Byron, of Shelob's Lair?
Honestly, it's one. I mean, there's so many good sequences in Return of the King, but I really do like this one a lot because it's, like you said, it's so creepy, and you can really kind of feel like Peter Jackson pulling on those horror roots, that he had, because he really pulls them all out for this. Because I mean, you got the creepy caverns, the webbing, the bones, and one thing I loved about the entirety of that scene is and there's two parts, I guess I can say, is I love the sound design. I love how it puts the creaking, the webbing has the sticky sound to it, the bones being knocked over, the clicking of Shelob, just all of it is just so well done. And then I love at the end when Shelob comes to get Frodo, there's no sound whatsoever. Like, I love
no music either.
Yeah, no music, no sound. And honestly, like, it was kind of weird, but like having the no sound and no music, I thought made it more horrifying almost. Like, I was just like, I was squirming when I saw like it crawling up behind him with no sound. I was like, oh.
that is the first memory I have of being in a theater where that kind of scene played out, where sound dropped out and you're just dealing with raw sound, and you could hear a pin drop. Like, it was dead silent. Everybody was tense as all get out in the theater, waiting for what happened. And what makes this scene great, I think, is and you see this in 2005 King Kong as well, but Peter Jackson is notoriously arachnophobic.
Yeah.
and there's an interview, him talking about working on the Shelob scene, and he said, for a lot of people, the scary thing about spider movement is the cliche, like, slow, one leg at a time thing. He said, for me, the worst is when they scuttle a bit and then they stop, and then they scuttle a bit and then they stop. And you'll notice when Shelob is chasing Frodo through the lair, that's what she does. Except for the shot where Frodo is literally stuck in the web and she is doing the slow thing. But moving through the lair, she literally goes stops, stops.
It's true.
It's like that is a weird worrying emotion or sense of motion that spiders have that you typically don't see in the animal kingdom. And hearing Peter Jackson describe it, I'm like, yeah, that might be the worst way spiders move.
Yeah. It's so true. I didn't even think about that, but that is true. That's exactly how she moves. And it's creepy, it's just like, and he didn't like dress up the spider either. It's like kind of a typical giant tarantula like spider, but it just like it was so well done. And oh
It was a very do not want scene.
yeah. Uh-huh. Oh.
And the emotion you're feeling at this point is the sheer betrayal of Gollum mixed with terror. And so you just can't help but like it was bad enough, heartbreaking, and horrible enough that Gollum did what he did to Sam.
Mhm.
But when you see like that his plan this whole time was to lead them to be eaten by a giant spider, you're like, oh my gosh, I
Uh-huh.
would rather you have strangled me in my sleep.
Uh-huh. This is so
Anything,
horrifying. Oh.
anything else.
Mhm. It's so true. And just like that whole sequence when Frodo is like cutting his way through the web and like Shelob's coming after him, and it's just so excruciatingly slow. It's like, oh, it's like, oh my
With
God.
Gollum singing
Yeah.
to taunt him. And,
Oh.
and actually, one other thing that's great about this scene is it lays some breadcrumbs. Like the first thing Frodo loses is the light from he got from Galadriel,
Mhm.
and that was the thing that was keeping him safe initially. And a great detail of the book is that Shelob could not remember the last time she even saw light.
Hmm.
Like she lives in this cave of darkness and disgusting. That the description Tolkien gave is vomits darkness is what she
Oh.
does. And yeah, so there's another description that a star had descended into the very mountains. Like that is like what she's experiencing at the moment. Like last time she saw light, she didn't like it very much, so she holed away here.
Uh,
And now there's this incredibly bright. It's like when you're trying to be discreet walking through the house at night and your iPhone flashlight turns on
mhm.
and it's just blinding, and worse, it's pointed at your face,
Uh-huh.
so it's just bright light. So yeah, it physically hurts her to even look at this thing. So that is what keeps Frodo safe for a while, and then eventually he just loses it in some webbing
Mhm.
and keeps going because why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
and then and then as he's trying to get out, he eventually loses Sting along the way. And so by the time he scrambles out of this web situation, um also love that bit from Elijah Wood where Gollum does his little taunting and whatever, and he's slashing away at the webs, and you
Mhm.
just see this. If as soon as I get to you, I'm going to strangle you.
Yeah.
Look, look from
Oh, it's
Elijah
true.
Wood. There's
Oh.
a little bit of facial acting in the midst of this horror and action, but he looks preeminently ready to strangle Smeagol for this.
Oh.
And the shift in Gollum where he's like toothily smiling
Uh-huh.
and then when as Frodo's making progress, the smile slips and he just kind of slinks away.
Yeah. It's like, uh-oh.
Yeah, I didn't expect he could cut these things.
It was kind of funny too, because like as soon as I saw that he lost Sting, in the cave and made his way out and stuff, and like Sting was gone, immediately like the author in me was like, "Oh man, this is ripe for a spin-off story." Someone finds the sword in the cave.
Well, someone does, and we'll
Uh-huh.
get to it.
That was the first time I saw it. I was like, "Oh man, this is good." Uh,
This is Luke's lightsaber in
yeah.
Empire Strikes Back.
Exactly. That was my first thought when I first saw it.
Yeah, and so he gets out and sees Gollum and does indeed proceed to strangle him. And Gollum again, like tragic character as he is, begins to cry and whine and moan. And yeah, it's fake.
Oh, no
It's
problem.
it's very much the I'm sorry I got caught
Yeah.
way of apologizing, but at the same time, you do this whole time we've been watching Frodo slowly, drunkenly make his way through this entire process as if he's just high on cocaine the entire time. And so, like, you sort of get that Gollum is only partially responsible for his treachery, which is all the more sad when Frodo gives up the game, finally tells Gollum what their actual plan is to destroy the stupid ring. And Gollum's having none of that.
Oh,
And I distinctly remember too. Oops, sorry. I remember, see, because I saw this with my dad and a friend, like I said, as a birthday present, because like my birthday's in December. But I distinctly remember I had read the books, and the scene where Frodo, like the end of Lion King, where Scar jumps on Simba and Simba just like pole vaults him over the, like that's what happens to Gollum. And as you see him slip into the darkness yelling, I distinctly remember my dad saying, "He ain't dead." Which he was right. He was right, but it was like, it was one of those things, like it's the TV rule. If you don't see the body, they're not dead.
Fantasy and sci-fi falls do no damage, you know.
Yes,
Like,
yes. That's right. That's right. That's why in The Force Awakens, to kill Han Solo, they had to drop him down a shaft and blow the thing up.
Yeah, and stab him through the chest.
Yes, yes, yes. 3 layers.
Yeah.
Because Emperor Palpatine also was thrown down and blown up, but evidently it was the stabbing that does it.
Somehow
right.
Palpatine returned.
We have, throughout this entire little series, we have mentioned the Rise of Skywalker way too many times.
Oh, yeah. We should do a scene by scene analysis of that film just to torture ourselves.
I don't know, man. But well, the funny thing is, like scene by scene, I don't hate it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the taken into a whole.
That
where
is
it's like,
it's the problem, yeah. You know,
and,
because there's actually a decent amount I enjoy in it. You know, it's like,
and the premise of Palpatine being back is predominantly flawed, but we're way off track here.
Yeah.
Point is, Gollum is very much not dead.
Yeah.
And yeah, we have that cool scene you alluded to where it's very quiet and Frodo's just haplessly walking through. That's good horror stuff right there.
It really is, because you know, Frodo, you know, he himself is not in his own right mind. You know, it's like we've been seeing, you know, over the course of the films that he's just slipping more and more, you know, and going between evil, you know, to catatonic to, you know, just like everything. And so it's like, you know, now, you know, he doesn't have, you know, Gollum's not there to guide him. Sam's not there. He's completely alone in this very dangerous area of Middle Earth.
Running on minimal food and water.
Minimal food and water, and like, you know, and very little sanity.
Yes. And I remember thinking, like, is this spider too big to be this quiet? But then, like, you think you know, it's a spider. Like, stealth is how they kill. Yes. Stingers isn't. I mean, the fact that it has a big stinger doesn't make sense, but the fact that it is quiet actually, you know, yeah, spiders are quiet. That's how they do it.
No, they are furry and you know, and don't weigh a lot, you know.
Right. Well, I imagine Shelob weighs quite a bit.
But... Yeah. The size, you know, size differentiate. Yeah.
That word.
Yeah.
Well, and like, okay, this is way too much biology for this kind of analysis, but I'm just gonna say it too. Like like the way insects or anything with an exoskeleton that is small. So arachnids, uh, insects, so on and so forth, they don't have muscles,
Mm.
right? What they essentially have is like a biological hydraulic system.
It's true. Uh-huh.
It's really gross when you think about
Mhm.
this.
Yeah, they don't have a skeleton, they have the exoskeleton,
Right.
so it's like they're so bizarre.
It's so different than us because like our skeleton is on the inside and it is surrounded by muscle and moved by muscle. Like their skeleton is on the outside and it's basically moved by pistons.
Yeah. Oh,
It's gross. It's really gross. And then yeah, Sam shows up in one of the coolest okay, actually before we get to Sam, the effect of Frodo being stabbed and Elijah Wood giving another great "I've been stabbed" face
uh-huh.
for like the fourth time.
uh,
And the effect of him being like immediately caught up and spun around like
oh,
ugh.
oh, it was so creepy.
and,
Oh,
and that's what they do.
uh-huh.
That's what they actually, it's so gross to see in real life. It's gross to see it with a person.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But yeah, it was
Oh,
wild little scene. But as she's like wrapping him up, you see Sting come out of the corner of the camera
uh-huh.
and the back of Sam and let him go, you filth. And then like,
Oh, I love that scene. Oh, it's such a great entrance.
yeah, and like look, this whole time, like the last time we saw Sam seriously fight was in Moria where he was hitting orcs with frying pans.
Yeah. It's true. Oh.
And it's like this guy has gone from okay, I'm improvising here to come on. And
It's
he's not good at it.
no.
But the fact that he's even in this fight is a miracle.
Oh, it is. And he's just like I just love that it's like literally he's at this point Sam has just no more F's to give. It's like he has had it with everything.
Well, we mentioned we mentioned in the Two Towers, we made the joke about how Eomer is just killing Uruk-hai, imagining worm tongue.
uh,
The same thing is happening here with Shelob, but it's Gollum.
yeah.
Like Sam is so freaking mad at Gollum for everything that's happened over the past couple hours. And this big dumb spider's in his way, and it's all he has to hack at. So it's like he may as well be Gollum.
uh-huh. It's true, this was like his like falling down moment basically. It's just like,
I mean, he has had enough, and this scene is so very well choreographed. Like all the little beats, like where he starts off and like kind of blinds her into a corner and cuts away at one of her legs. I don't think he actually hacks it off or anything. Just kind of wins a hit. And the part where she like gets him almost in the mandibles and he's just like holding back, and she like shifts him up the rock face and he's kicking her.
Oh,
look, I don't want my bare feet anywhere near like a small spider.
no. Those
Much less
mandibles clicking was just so horrifying. It just like oh.
Look, anything that can be described as having mandibles is enough.
And then like when she's trying to stab him with the stinger, when he's underneath her, it's like
and he's like rolling left and right trying to get out of the way.
Oh, yeah. For all you viewers, since I love my puns, we could say that Sam was when she was trying to get him with her stinger, that he was a victim of an assault. I'm so sorry.
It's fine. It's fine. Going back to the mandibles comment, like yeah, I mentioned like anything that can be described as having a mandible is no good. Look, if you have mandibles, your mouth isn't right. That's just what it goes down to. Like everything else has a normal, like even lampreys, disgusting as they are, it's a mouth, right? Like, but mandibles, it's like, what is, how do you eat anything?
Uh-huh. Oh,
I don't even want to know. I don't want to visualize it. I don't want to see it.
like it's like
Gross.
next to a mouth, there should never be any like free moving thing.
Appendages. Yeah.
Appendages. Yeah. It's like
Unless you're Davy Jones, you just can't pull it off.
uh-huh. Oh.
Cthulhu, which is like proto Davy Jones. So,
Uh-huh. Sure. Oh.
but yeah, like tentacle beards will allow. Mandibles, no. No, 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 no. We are not dealing with any mandibles today. But the cool bit and the thing that I noticed, because it's one of those things like in movies, you don't see it a lot anymore, but it's very of the time, where something happens multiple times so that you see it sink in this case literally, because like Shelob impales herself on Sting, and you see the angle of him pulling out Sting like 3 times.
Yeah.
Like it's like this angle, this angle, this angle, you know, like, so you see one stab and they just really want you to know he got her good.
It's true. I remember seeing like that type of shot. You saw that a lot in the 2000s in action movies and stuff. You know,
Yeah.
where they show it from different angles and everything. Yeah, you don't really see that often now.
No, nowadays, like it one punch is one punch, you know, like you don't see the same punch from different angles. Or what you might see is a breakaway cut where like fist connects and then it breaks away to the back where you see them fly away. That's fine, you know. But what we see here is literally Sam pulls out Sting from a wide shot, Stan pulls out Sting from right under, and Sam pulls out Sting from a different wide shot. Like they couldn't decide that. Yeah, all 3 are good. Put them in there. But yeah, it's a great scene though. The whole thing from start to finish is a mixture of horror, and then when you see Sam again, it's elation. We did miss a little point where Frodo was tripping and saw Galadriel.
Yeah. Oh, that scene was random. Oh.
Yeah, I get what they're going for, but at the same time, there's not much to say. He needed a little pick me up, literally a little pick me up. But yeah, the scene ends with another meme moment. Frodo being absolutely comatose, wrapped up in that spider's web, and Sam thinking that Frodo is dead. And to be fair, he looks dead.
Yeah, he really does. Oh.
Like, yeah, I imagine a coroner would just look at him and go, yeah, that one's gone.
Yeah.
I don't need to touch him. He's dead. So in Sam's defense, it looks like Frodo is dead, and little touching moment where he's kind of cradling Frodo's what he thinks is a corpse, but it's just passed out Frodo. And you know, it says, "Don't go where I can't follow." And we have first off a great musical moment where Sting lights up, and you get this like kind of like I don't know how to describe it. There's a motif for it, like, and Sam goes off and hides as more orcs arrive, and orcs are some of our favorite characters because they're just so charismatically stupid and ugly and gross, and like I don't know what it is. Like every orc in this series that gets speaking lines, like they're all really entertaining.
They really are. Like, they always have either some type of memorable line or like facial expression or something,
or quirk. Like to me, this one, as there's the first guy that's like, looks like old Shelob's been having a bit of fun.
Yeah.
And my favorite is the scrawny guy that explains that Shelob actually just paralyzed him, because the words he uses is, she jabs him with a stinger and he goes limp as a boned fish. And then he does this kind of thing at the end of it.
I remember I laughed at the boned fish allegory. I was like, what is like limp as a boned fish? Like, it's like
that noise he makes, limp as a boned fish.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you doing, man? That's so gross. But yeah, that I can't wait to get to the Tower of Kirathungal, because orcs in this series, like, they're anytime they get a chance to speak, they're the worst in the most watchable way. Like
they there's I don't want to say that, but there's like a scene, like, when the cavalry charge goes on, there's so many great orc expressions to go, it's like this movie especially had just so many great orc moments. But yeah, there's been some great ones scattered over the whole trilogy.
the costuming is great, and it's just like we mentioned at the Battle of Helm's Deep, that there are a lot of like random Rohan people that you see throughout the battle. Like there's the one-eyed guy that we all latched onto, know, and there's like some of the kids that are there, some of the old people that are there. Like you recognize their faces and you see them later on in the battle. Like there is a continuity of character. The same is true with orcs.
Yes, that is true.
Like you can see some of these orcs and like you don't know his name, but you look at him and you go, oh, that is a weird looking orc. And later on you see him. Like he has a role in this battle. They have charted out where this orc goes this whole time. It's crazy.
That was one of the things that I really did like about, not like, but loved about like Peter Jackson, especially with this trilogy, was that attention to detail, because it's so easy with epic fantasy ones where you have thousands of these characters and so much CGI and stuff. It's so easy to just be like, okay, copy and paste these orcs here and in here, and just making kind of this, mash of a battle going on and stuff. But it takes a lot of talent to be able to chart where everybody is going to go, and like you said, to have that continuity of a few scenes later, this orc is going to show up here, or this human is going to show up here, and it adds a lifelike quality, I think, to the overall battle. It makes it feel more real.
Yeah, and once you see them die, you never see them again. Like that. That they're done at that point. So it's not like I think part of it is like the movie magic sleight of hand is to actually make these ridiculously like eye-catching, crazy designed orcs that you immediately train your eye to, so that you miss the fact that off to the side there are 50 copies.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's not noticeable. Like you couldn't pause and be like, see, there's 50 copies, but like because you immediately notice these like 12 or 13 sets of orcs or even weird looking men that are just out there, you focus immediately on them and ignore the fact that they've used this CGI software called Massive to fill in a lot of this battle space. And
that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they created brand new software called Massive that is, because like at the time, and probably still is, because I can't think of anything that even came close to attempting anything like this. The charge for the Battle of Pelenor Fields was the largest cavalry charge in cinematic history.
Really?
Like the most on-screen riders. And the funny thing about that is most of the people they got were women.
You know what? I didn't really think about that, but yeah, because isn't there supposed to be like what, like probably like 10,000 of them or somewhere, 10,000?
Yeah, I think 6,000 total Rohirrim, I think.
Mhm.
And the thing is, like, the vast overwhelming majority of them are CGI, right? There's only like 100 and some that are like actual people on horseback. But you think about it, that is a lot of people on a lot of horses to
Mhm.
film for a scene in a movie. A lot of times you'll notice this in all kinds of great epics where there's like cavalry charges and stuff. A lot of times they'll do something where, and this is where Return of the King is distinct. And I know we're sort of getting ahead of ourselves here. What you'll see is the angle from the bottom of a hill,
Mhm.
so that you see like 20 horses on a hill, and it's implied there's thousands behind that,
Mhm.
right? So you can see the 20 horses on the hill and in your mind fill in the back. But what makes Return of the King so great is they were so confident in this software that they created that they do that classic hill trick and then morph the camera up over the hill so you can see the army, and it's like, oh, that is cool.
It just, yeah, like I remember seeing that scene for the first time and it was just amazing. I was like, oh my gosh, just like there was just an awe. And I'm sure, when we get to it, we can talk about the music and all of the amazingness that goes along with it.
Yeah. And look, the generalities of the battle scenes in this are probably going to dip in and out of all of this discussion. There are some character beats we're going to have to get to. And one of these is actually related to Rohan, which is an extended only scene, a very, very brief scene where the Rohirrim are in encampment and Eowyn and Mary are kind of talking. Eowyn is, it's kind of funny, and I sort of understand why they cut the scene, because Eowyn is sitting there, helmet on, and kind of like speaking very as little as possible. And when she is dropping her voice an octave, which is probably what somebody in her position would do. Like, I'm not going to speak much at all. And when I do, I'm just going to kind of mask the fact that I'm a woman. Like, and most of it is like Mary monologue, where he was talking about how, and the reason this scene isn't in the theatrical, I think, is because it's sort of covered territory, where he's talking about how he wishes he could do more. He wishes he was a great knight of Rohan, capable of saving all his friends. And Mary's journey in this film is very much, I don't want to be left behind doing nothing. And this scene just sweetly expresses that. And it's a character moment for Eowyn too, which, because the whole reason she sympathized with him and scooped him up to begin with is because that's how she feels. I too don't want to sit on the sidelines and wait for everybody to do the cool stuff. I want to do it. I want to be a part of this. I want a taste of this victory. It's a good little scene. But now we come to something that has shockingly recently become a meme. Like, I can't believe it's so delayed that this became a meme. And I don't know what caused this, what catalyzed this as all of a sudden becoming a meme, but I am all for it. We have GROND, which is the coolest battering ram. And something I'm seeing here in the scene list here is slightly wrong, because this is one thing I do know was extended. Although I may have talked about it last time in the Siege of Gondor aspect of it. But at first, they have like small, lesser battering rams that they bring to try and get the gate. And they're all failing, and they're just being shot down right in front of the gate by Gondorian archers anyway. And there's just like a small like log pile of battering rams where dead orcs have been shot down. And one of the lieutenants is talking to Gothmog, and he's like, we can't breach the gate. Nothing's working. And Gothmog just gets this goofy orc grin, and he's like, GROND will breach it. And they're like, yes, bring out the wolf's head.
Yeah.
And this battering ram is so cool.
Oh. I love how
Like,
it has the flames in the front. It's just, oh, so
yeah,
cool.
it's like they call it a wolf's head, but I honestly always sort of visualize it as a pig.
Uh-huh.
Like it very much reminds me of Ganon from Legend of Zelda. Like it's an evil pig. Like that's what it looks like to me. But whatever. Far be it from me to contradict Gothmog. It's a wolf's head with flames on the inside and these like crazy, like spiked, stylized hand things in front of it. And it's this enormous big metal ram with fire in it that's like, it's like on a cart. Like cart is so underselling it. It's like a cart the height of like a double-decker London bus, and like the length of it with the width of like 4 of them. So it's this enormous thing being pushed by trolls, dragged by these weird like goat rhino things, whatever those are. And then like to swing it, they literally have trolls like pulling chains. It is an enormous, cool battering ram. The prop for this is one of those things. It's like, yeah, I would love to have the miniature of Grond.
It's true, like, because you think about, because we've seen how strong the trolls are, and you're seeing like how all of them are like struggling to pull this thing, and it's like, and there's a crap ton of them pulling on it. And so it just really gives you an idea of how powerful this is.
And the orcs around it are all chanting Grond.
Uh-huh.
It's so cool. Like, I'm imagining, like, if I'm a Gondorian soldier and I see that, I'm just like, we're done, guys.
Oh, it's true. I loved how they were. It's funny you mentioned the chanting, because I loved how they were chanting it, because it's like there's no reason why they should be so excited at just like this battering ram, but they're like so excited about it. It's like, and I love it. It's so cool.
It's infectious. It's like one of those things, like they're excited, so I'm excited.
Yeah.
Like,
oh.
And there is a bit of lore behind this too, because it's called Grond, the Hammer of the Underworld. And in the Silmarillion, Grond is literally the nickname of the Warhammer of Morgoth. So, or not the nickname, the name of the Warhammer of Morgoth. So Sauron commissioned this battering ram to be made in honor of his old master. It's like, that's pretty metal.
That is pretty metal.
Like the whole concept of Grond, everything around it is just really metal.
I didn't know that. That's really cool. That's a great little bit of lore on there too, and it adds so much more too, because it adds a direct connection to Sauron, which is interesting. So
yeah, it's such a cool thing though. Like the entire thing is great. Before technically there's a scene break where we get to Denethor being crazy. But before we get to that, I want to stick with Grond here, because the actual breach of the gate is incredible. If only, like, there's a comedic bit here, and at the same time, like, it's a very dark kind of comedy, because like Gandalf primes himself behind the gate and has like all these Gondorian soldiers, and he's like, you are soldiers of Gond. He's given this good pump up speech. He says, no matter what comes through this gate, you will stand your ground. And as soon as the gate is breached, like 3 battle trolls, like decked out in heavy armor with big hammers, come striding through, and even Gandalf like drops his jaw, like, even Gandalf is like, I can't believe I'm asking you guys to do this.
I love that scene, because it's like even he has a look just like, come on. It's like,
you couldn't start with the orcs. You had to go with full-on armored trolls. So our next scene, we go to Denethor, who's decided that Faramir is done for, and rather than die in battle, like, I think the words he literally uses are, why do the fools fly? Better to die sooner than late, for die we must. And as he's having these guards carry Faramir on a stretcher towards the tombs at the back of Minas Tirith, with the express purpose of burning himself and Faramir alive.
Oh, I like, what is his line? Like, we'll burn like the heathen kings of old.
There's lore for that too.
Uh-huh.
And just like with the Frodo Sam Shelob's Lair thing, I think we should just see this through.
I agree. Yeah.
I will note a bit of a change in the extended versus the theatrical. In the theatrical cut, Pippin runs up to Gandalf and says that Faramir's losing, or that Denethor's losing his mind. He's burning Faramir alive, and at that moment, we hear the horns of Rohan. Right. In the extended edition, what happens is he tells Gandalf that Denethor has lost his mind. He's burning Faramir alive. Gandalf scoops up Pippin. They ride up to up towards the tombs, and they get stopped by the Witch King. Like the Witch King drops in on his fell beast and immediately starts antagonizing Gandalf. And Gandalf says, go back to the abyss that awaits you and your master. And Witch King says, do you not know death when you see it, old man? This is my hour. And he raises his sword, which like becomes encircled in flame. And then Gandalf's staff breaks in his hands.
Oh.
And then we hear the horns.
So you know what, that actually makes a lot of sense, because in the later scene in the theatrical with Gandalf and he doesn't have his staff, and I remember thinking, what happened to his staff?
Right. And it is a bit of a continuity error because he just gets it back later. But yeah, that whole sequence of events happens. And it also makes sense of another thing too, which is we hear the horns, and when we hear the horns, the Witch King looks off and pulls off to go that way. And what does the Witch King do later but swoop down on Theoden? So there's a bit of continuity there. So with the theatrical cut, we have Pippin telling Gandalf that Faramir's going to be burned alive, and then bam, we switch into the Rohan scene. And the extended, we have just a little more tissue between all that. So
that's almost one of those scenes that I almost kind of feel like almost shouldn't have been pulled out. Because like having a confrontation between the Witch King and Gandalf is just really cool. And like it doesn't sound like it was too long either,
No, it's not. It's a very brief scene, and I fully agree it shouldn't have been taken out. And it delivers on a promise. Because you remember when Gandalf is telling Pippin what they'll face from Minas Tirith, one of the things Pippin says is, we've got the White Rider, that's got to count for something. And Gandalf gets 1,000-yard stare and says, Sauron has yet to reveal his deadliest servant, and goes into the Witch King. Right? So Gandalf in that moment is foreshadowing this confrontation he is going to have face to face with the Witch King. And then when Gothmog and the Witch King are at Osgiliath after they've driven Faramir and company away, Gothmog says, what of the wizard? And the Witch King says, I will break him. So we have in the theatrical cut the two build-up scenes and no confrontation.
You're right. Oh.
And so yeah, that's a difference. That scene should have been left in. I think some of the other ones we've mentioned, like they cover the same ground that has been, they're good scenes. I wouldn't trade them for the world. I only watch the extended edition when I'm watching this, even without the really cool scenes that we're talking about like here. But this one I think was a more egregious cut. Like this one shouldn't have been cut at all. And then anyway, let's get back to the Denethor Faramir thing. I did want to just note that difference because that also feeds into when Gandalf and Pippin arrive on this scene. So that difference does matter a little bit to how this plays out, depending on which version you're watching. But largely, my goodness, Denethor, John Noble is playing crazy so well.
Oh, his role he was amazing in this scene.
I know. And like in a movie where you just had the betrayal of Gollum leading to Shelob's lair, and somehow he's the second most wanting to be strangled and punched in this film, like, dang, Denethor, you're really you're really insufferable. And like his monologues to himself are so good.
Mm-hmm.
Like you mentioned that we shall burn like the heathen kings of old. Cool lore bit, which we will likely see in the Amazon show. At the very least, I really, really hope so. When Numenor starts to go wrong, it's because Sauron is captive there and slowly works his way into the ear of Ar-Pharazôn, one of the last, well, technically the last king of Numenor. And they get to the point where they are doing human burnt sacrifices to Melkor and Sauron in Numenor. So when Denethor says we shall burn like the heathen kings of old, he is referring to that practice of burnt offering human sacrifice in Numenor.
Interesting.
That's dark.
That's super. It's like super dark.
This man has given completely up.
And like I love too, like I love how in this scene every bit of him in this scene is just so extra and so overly dramatic. Like he's just like such a drama queen. It's like,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And as he's monologuing to himself when Pippin's like, he's not dead.
Yeah.
He's not dead. And his response is to just drag him bodily out of the chamber. The whole farewell, Peregrine, son of Paladin. I release you from my service. Go now and die in whatever way seems best to you.
Yeah.
Wow.
And like even like his guards who are supposed to set fire to it, they just are kind of looking around like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Like the scene, like he's like after he's poured the oil on himself, he's standing on the fire, he's just standing there with his arms out. It's like, and the guards are just kind of looking at him.
Yeah, they're like, boy. Look, you thought you had a bad boss. Look, guys, I'm all for loyalty, but there comes a point where you've got to speak your mind. Just saying, this doesn't seem right, sir.
Like you have a guy running in saying Faramir's not dead. It's like maybe you should check him, guards. You know, it's like
yeah. I mean, like, but Denethor is so far down the road of delusion. There's a theory. It's a really, really cool theory, because in the appendices of the book, they have like a timeline of events, right? Mm-hmm. And Denethor has been using Minas Tirith's Palantir on and off for the past several years. And he alludes to it actually in the script of this movie too, where he says, do you think the eyes of the White Tower are blind? Like, I know who rides with Theoden. Like, how would he know all this stuff? Well, it's because he's been using the Palantir. Now, what's really cool, on the eve of the siege, they say that in the Tower of Icthelion, you can see, oh, stop it, Siri. What did I ask you? You can see, they saw a light flickering in the high Tower of Icthelion. In the appendices, it tells you that Denethor used the Palantir on that night. As a side note, that is also the first night of Frodo's captivity in the Tower of Cirith Ungol. So it is very possible that that is exactly what Denethor saw.
That's
And
really
if he saw that, knowing Frodo took the ring into Mordor, and now knowing Frodo is captured, divorced from all the context, he's thinking, we have lost. The enemy has the ring.
That's a really interesting theory. I actually really like that.
Yeah, I love that theory. There's nothing to support it other than context. Like, it's possible that that's what happened, and it's said in the books that like Denethor strove with Sauron for some time. Like, it's not like he immediately lost this fight. He was in it for a while. He was pretty good at it, all things considered. But this night of all nights, he breaks. Why is that, I wonder?
No, that's a really good theory.
Yeah, it's a cool moment. But my goodness, he's the worst. And the moment too where Gandalf barges in on Shadowfax and he says, "Stay this madness," and the guard kind of looks at him like, "Yeah, why are we doing this?" And Denethor just snatches the torch from him, like. There's a line I think is only in the extended edition where he's holding the torch and he just says, "You may triumph on the field of victory for a day, but against the power that has arisen in the east, there is no victory." And then he throws the torch down. So again, lending credibility to the fact that he thinks he's seen the end of this. But my goodness, man, you are ignoring every bit of context around you.
Oh, and I love when Gandalf has Shadowfax just like totally just like kick him in the face.
Because Pippin jumps into the fire to try and get Faramir out of there, and Denethor is actively trying to stop him, and that's when Shadowfax kicks him in the face. And of course, like the cherry on the top of all this craziness is Denethor running like a mile and a half on fire, jumping off the edge of Minas Tirith. It's like, it's one of those things, like it doesn't make any sense at all.
None whatsoever.
But it's just so cool to see. You don't care at all.
It's just like hilarious, and I love like how he's running out on fire and Gandalf is just like watching him. He's like, "So goes." It's like,
yeah. Like imagine that the version of that scene that's true audio. So it's Gandalf talking quietly while listening to the screams of a man on fire.
Yeah. True.
Sociopath Gandalf. Like, what in the world, man?
And then like I love like in my own head canon, I always like to think that like Denethor is like, you know, he's so extra that he's just like, I'm on fire, and so I'm gonna jump off so all of my citizens, you know, see me plunging to my death.
Imagine.
Oh, good.
Imagine you're near where he lands.
Yeah. And I love like when he jumps off, the camera pans out, showing everything that's going on. It's like you can't even notice what's happening.
It's a flash in the pan. Like, what's one more guy on fire?
Exactly. So I just love to think that he's like, man, I'm gonna do this giant, like huge, you know, moment of me jumping off, and in the end, like no one even notices it. You know?
You're far from the most significant thing happening right now. Lucky for Faramir that Pippin is a real one, because I mean that Denethor almost got away with this. With this murder-suicide plot. Like, geez.
Denethor, I think, is one of the great villains, you know, of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, of like secondary villains. You know, he's great, you know.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before. We're gonna mention it again many times. Well, probably just to the end of this episode, because things are coming to a head here, but he is the mirror opposite of Theoden.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Theoden also thinks they've lost. Theoden also thinks this is not working. There's no way we make it out of this alive. We're done here. And the way they handle it couldn't be more opposite. Where Denethor is just full on despair and drama to the max. Theoden is like, well, if I'm gonna die, well, let's make this glorious.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I think we have covered just about everything leading up to that point anyway. So this kind of serves as a fantastic segue. Rohan arriving at Minas Tirith. In isolation, you take great scenes of cinema. This might be my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Like, man, oh man. Every time I remember the first time I saw it, I just had sheer goosebumps the entire time. The presentation of this is beautiful beyond description.
Mm-hmm.
The script is incredible beyond belief, and the general quality of this scene is just biblical in scope, in poignancy, and everything. My goodness, what a scene.
I would agree with you. I think this is definitely a top 5 movie moment for me. It's everything about it is absolutely perfect. And it's that wonderful moment of like hope and despair, but also just like courage in the face of like certain defeat almost as well.
Yeah.
It's like I love, it's just the whole scene, especially with the speech right before, is just like, it's so metal. It's just, he's like riding basically just saying like, to flames, to the end of the world, and then he's just screaming death, as they go forward. It's just like, it's just it couldn't be more Viking and metal.
I know. And I mentioned the last episode because the Siege of Gondor is my favorite chapter in all Lord of the Rings. And the way it ends is leading up to this scene, because that whole chapter, and let's recap, all this stuff is in the movie. The armies of Mordor arrive at Minas Tirith, and the first thing they do is catapult severed heads of the veterans at Osgiliath into the city. And then the second move they do is to unleash flying versions of fear incarnate that are the Nazgul onto the city. The third thing they do is, now our catapults are firing boulders. Then they start with the siege towers. Then they do like fake attempts at the gate just to get you a little happy. And then they bring in freaking GROND. Giant metal, like literally metal and also metaphorically metal wolf head with flames inside. They bash in the gates with ease. And then they have the Witch King destroy Gandalf's staff in front of everyone. And the chapter ends. It said, far away in some courtyard, heedless of wizardry or war, a cock crowed. 3 times it crowed to greet the oncoming dawn. And with it, horns blowing wildly. Rohan had come at last. Like, what a hopeful note to end such a hellish situation on.
True.
And obviously that text can't appear in the film, but the film version of that text is very much alive. Like, when they arrive, everything's going poorly. In fact, there's a fantastic scene we got to talk about right after this, where they sum up how poorly things are going. But Rohan comes. Theoden is there. His speech is one of the greats in cinematic history. What's funny is Bernard Hill improvised the slapping the spears with his sword thing.
Really?
Yes. And they loved it. They were like, yes, yes, do that. That's good. That's really good. And the music is just next level.
Oh.
Like, we've made no secret how we love the Rohan theme, and this is the most powerful it ever gets. And it's just glorious stuff. And then the fact that like when they show up, Gothmog looks over at them and he's really annoyed.
Uh-huh.
and as the scene goes on, Gothmog's desperation kicks in, and we've never seen this guy worried about anything. Like, he literally started off this battle just barely sidestepping that rubble and spitting on it. Like, this orc has been the most badass of badass orcs.
Uh-huh.
And now, finally now, he's like, this isn't good. Everything about this scene comes together to just make movie magic. It's one of those things. It's to me, you see scenes every now and then that make you think, this is why we watch movies. And this is one of them. It's up there with like the Brachiosaurus reveal in Jurassic Park, where you're just like, yeah, this is what movies are for. What a great scene.
It ties together everything that, like you said, that is good about movie making. It has the emotional feel to it. It has the excitement. It has action. It just, everything is there. And and I think that you have that kind of the soft beginning of the music when you first see them, with the horns, that it's not this bombastic, it's not this bombastic track or anything. And I love too that when the music finally swells, when they're charging down the hill, it's still not this bombastic track, but I remember when I first heard it, I thought, oh, this is interesting that they didn't do like a more bombastic version, but it works so well. It's perfect. It's just, I can't 100% explain it, but it works so well as it's going forward. And it's just like, you've gotten to know these characters, over the course of a couple of movies, and just like, seeing them all together, seeing, Theoden, leading his men, into battle. It's such an emotionally satisfying moment.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, Tolkien once said that the great pagan virtue is fighting in the face of inescapable death. Like that, the idea of going out gloriously, is the great pagan virtue, so to speak. And that's what we're seeing in Rohan at every step of the way. Like, Theoden's arc has been entirely of, yes, this is hopeless. Nonetheless, we're gonna do this. And like, he goes so far as to state it earlier in the film, where one of his captains says, we can't hope to break the lines of Mordor, and he says, no, we can't, but we will meet them in battle nonetheless. Like, that is entirely his attitude here. And even his speech is not like, rah rah, we're gonna win.
No, it's like, we're gonna die, hoorah,
Exactly. And the best part about it is they're like, yeah, this is how we're going out. Yeah, hell yeah.
What I love about him is, I love that, like, he gets so excited over these glorious death charges, because we saw it at Helm's Deep, when like, we're gonna ride out, and he's like thrilled over it. It's like,
yes,
it's like he loves this romantic, glorious, final assault, and I think, I don't know, I mean, I think everybody loves that when it comes to like books and everything. There's just that honorable, glory to it.
It's what
And
everyone wishes they would do faced in the same circumstance.
oh yes, 100%. You know, people want, everyone wants to hope that they have that courage and that feel. You know, everybody wants to be a Theoden, not a
Denethor.
yeah.
If Denethor is what you aspire to be, seek a
Yeah.
therapist.
Oh, but yeah, it's like, and I love that, like you said, they're charging down, and like you said, it's not a hopeful speech. It's we're at the end of the world, everything's burning down, and we're all gonna die. Let's charge.
Yeah, might as well have fun with it.
And then you see, I love the panning over the orcs' faces. That at first, when they see the horses, they're like, and Gothmog's telling them, "All right, archers here, whatever." They're all
Yeah.
like, "All right, yeah, we're gonna get these guys." Like, okay, we're gonna kill them all, whatever. And then they're charging, and it's like you have 6,000 horsemen all screaming death, riding towards you, and they just start to lose their nerve.
I would. I mean, wouldn't you? Like, and they have pikes there. It's so funny because like it in both cases here in Lord of the Rings, pikes, which are specifically designed to deter horses, just mean nothing.
Yeah. They just get ridden over like they're just like made of like they're stalks of corn. It's like,
yeah, it's not a problem at all. Part of it is Rohan did the same cheat twice of showing up as the sun's rising.
Yeah. They activated the cheat code.
Yes. They played the song, the sun song.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah, it's goodness gracious, like it's a great scene, and it leads into the general Battle of Pelenor Fields, which starts as an absolute massacre in favor of Rohan, like to the point where they're sweeping and like it's not even a full minute into this scene after the initial collision where Theoden's like, yeah, victory, we have victory. And then we have another, like, again, we talked about this with Boromir's horn, we talked about this with Rohan's horns, with the elves' horns. Here we have another fantastic horn sound with the Haradrim. I love that horn. It sounds like, and I could be way off base here, it sounds like Indian somehow, or it doesn't sound like a didgeridoo, but it's like in the same family of instrument. Like it's just a weird noise. But the Theoden's face too, like we don't see the Mumakil first, we see the expression on Theoden's face as he looks over at them, and it's like, huh, what could this be? And then bam, the payoff from the two towers of seeing these enormous elephants with more tusks.
Those things are freaky.
Yeah, and the chains that they put between the tusks in order to sweep, that is a gruesome, horrifying idea to do. And these things are enormous. And
like you get the full scope of it when you see the horsemen next to them, and you're like, oh my gosh,
I love when they first appear, because the orc army is in full retreat, and you see them tuck away behind the elephants. Like you see them like, oh yeah.
Oh.
When you're losing and you get your big brother to beat the level for you.
Exactly.
It's
the
like,
reinforcements have spawned in,
yeah, like and this charge, because we have a second charge, granted Theoden doesn't have time for a real speech, he's just like, reform the line, charge, yeah. And then they do it, but like it's also surprisingly effective.
It does partially work,
Not to say that, like, we talked about those like chains that they put between the tusks and stuff. Like these Mumakils kill a lot of Rohirrim. Like I'm not in any way downplaying the fact that they kill a lot here, but still you have like these cool action pieces of Eowyn has Mary take the reins while she slices the legs of one of them from underneath. You have Eomer throwing a spear, expertly hitting one of the drivers that then pulls the Mumakil into another one. So he literally kills two birds with one spear. And you have Theoden directing archery fire at them. It's like, it's just so good. Such good action.
Oh, it is. And it's just like all of the direction of it is just so expertly done.
Yeah. I mean, you have these big tusk swings that just send horsemen flying. Like, you have all these, each individual kill of these Mumakil is incredible to see. Because like anytime you're seeing that something that big being brought down by men, it's just cool to see. But also like the give and take here, because it's not as one-sided. Like, I think they do admirable given the fact that they just have horses. Like, but the whole ebb and flow of this sequence is incredible to me. I remember being blown away in the theaters watching this. So good.
And that's the thing too, is it's a very CGI heavy scene, obviously, or scene chain of scenes. But I was like, I was so amazed at just how, we say that we've said this throughout, pretty much every episode, but like how well it's held up, that it's like, this is a daylight scene. This isn't hidden in like fog or darkness or whatever.
Or rain.
Rain, and it looks good still, it's like, sure, if you pause it and zoom in, you can see, that it's a CGI model, but it's like, it doesn't.
No horses were hit by giant elephants in the making of this film.
Exactly.
But you wouldn't know looking at it in motion.
You wouldn't, yeah. And it's like, because sometimes when you're watching a movie, and the CGI is dated or whatever, it's kind of distracting, because you can tell, like, oh man, this is kind of bad, I do not get that feeling with any of the Lord of the Rings movies. And yet these are like almost 20, these are 20 years old, and they still look incredible,
Yeah. One you mentioned that is, well, you didn't mention, but you made me think of it. In the initial charge, there's one horseman that always catches my eye, because I always think, oh my gosh, that looks deadly painful. And it's a horse that gets shot and then kind of like collapses over the front of itself, and it literally flips over. Like, oh, I was like, that rider is dead, that horse is dead. It like that looked bad.
I remember that one you're talking about.
Like, oh no. You don't want to see a horse die like that. But yeah, it's the whole Battle of Pelenor Fields is just incredible. And the thing is, this is so easy to get wrong, because in a case like Helm's Deep or even the Siege of Gondor, the geography is really well laid out, and it funnels action. When you have battles taking place over fields, it's very easy to get your viewer disoriented, or to feel disconnected from everything, or like it's nebulous, or none of it matters, or that there's weightlessness to it because it's happening in a big empty place, right? And that doesn't happen here. It's like, it's a miracle that this scene plays out really well, for the reasons of CGI, for the reasons of large armies being inherently a more nebulous and hard to follow concept, and for the fact that it's taking place in a field. So all of these things are working against it, and yet it comes out an incredible action sequence.
I agree. It's one of the sequences that stands out over the course of the whole trilogy, that, like whenever you mention, the battles, that everyone always remembers the elephants, it's like,
how could you not? It's great. Like, we've had great creature design throughout this series, and we've seen these creatures before. But when we saw them before, it was like a little skirmish in the woods, like you barely see them. They're there for a little while and then they're gone, but here like it pays off that Gandalf earlier in the movie was laying out all these different armies that were going to come to bear on Gondor, and we literally see them happen one after the other. Like without Rohan, this
Mhm.
doesn't get one.
Oh no, it would have been completely over, you know.
By the time Aragorn gets there, there's nothing to save at that point.
Mhm.
Like, and then that leads into the fact that without Aragorn and company, this doesn't go well for Rohan either.
No. Oh, that's
But
true. The tide swiftly begins to turn.
yeah, there's so much that like um in Helm's Deep, we had all bad buildup, like everything was going badly, and then we had the elves, and that's like, oh yay, we got something. The good guys got to win, you know. And then after that, it's bad news, bad news, bad news, bad news, bad news, bad news, bad news. Reinforcements were saved,
Mhm.
right? So the flow of the Siege of Gondor is bad news, bad news, bad news, bad news. Reinforcements were saved. Bad news, bad news, bad news. Reinforcements were saved. Like it goes back and forth a couple times, you know, like, and that's so cool. And speaking of that back and forth, let's cut away to some bad news in one of the most poignant scenes in the trilogy. And I think when James alluded to the growing relationship, I figured I'd let a big one out and just roll after that. When James alluded to the growing relationship between Gandalf and Pippin in this film, I think he was looking forward to this scene where it culminates, and I couldn't agree more. Gandalf and Pippin are holed up in Minas Tirith on like the second or third level, and there's like a troll with a hammer beating at the little gate that is just holding them back from the next level. Like that, the first level is gone. It's just done. Everything that was in that first ring is over, or it has retreated back. You know, those are the only two options. It's either dead or it's already back up on the second level. And as this troll is banging away at the gate, Nazgul flies by on front of the camera, and Pippin is talking to Gandalf, and you know, it's like, I never thought it would end this way. And Gandalf says, like, end? No, the journey doesn't end here. Death is another path, one we all must take. And then he actually quotes from a chapter you really like, Byron, in the House of Tom Bombadil. It's not Tom that says this, it's actually just Tolkien prose, but this is the gray rain curtain of this world rolls back and all is silver glass. And then you see it, a far green country under a swift sunrise. Like Gandalf is describing a heavenly experience that he's already had, actually. And lest we forget, Gandalf has died.
Yeah.
This is his second life here, you know, like and Pippin is really comforted by this notion. And it's such it in the middle of the scene too, the music playing is a little refrain of Into the West, which we'll get to it, but that is my favorite credit song of this series. It's such a beautiful scene. Great little character moment, great little introspection in the midst of all this sword and sorcery. You know, I love this scene.
It's true, you know, because it's so easy, in these type of movies when there's so much action going and everything to get caught up, in the huge extravagant blockbuster fighting and stuff. And so it was really nice to have this, like you said, this quiet little interaction that's in the middle in the middle of all the chaos going on, and it just kind of just breaks, and I kind of view it almost as kind of this another little hopeful scene, basically, that it's just giving a little, because you're in the midst of despair and chaos and hopelessness, and and then you have Gandalf there to give just a little bit of hope in there, that there is still something beyond, and it's not the end of everything. And and like you said, it's just a great little character moment between the two of them, and it just further just develops, I think, Gandalf as a character and his and his outlook on life and how he views these type of situations that he's in. He's not panicking or anything.
Yeah, and like he's still concerned. Like
Uh-huh.
he recognizes that the situation's still not ideal.
Mhm.
Like the moment like the troll starts banging on the gate again and kind of snaps them back into the moment, you see that Gandalf is, yeah, I'm comforting this guy.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean death is all pleasant.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
I'm doing the best I can with what I have here, and what I'm telling this guy is true, but that doesn't mean we're not. It's still in the midst of this horrible battle.
Mhm.
You know,
Exactly. And still not trying to find a way out, and a path to victory.
right. Like, yeah, look, if this is the end
Mhm.
for us here, it's not the end, period.
Mhm.
That being said, let's try not to make this be the end here. So I think that really is kind of the spirit of this whole scene. And one thing I want to note too, in the extended edition, there's a little closure that we don't get in the theatrical cut, which is, have you thought, Byron, what happened to Gothmog?
You know what? That's true. They don't actually show anything, I don't think.
Right. In the extended edition, they do.
Okay, yeah, because I remember when I saw the theatrical, I did wonder what happened to him because I think the last they show of him is just like running away from the cavalry charge.
Right. So
Mhm.
he's there that whole time. He's still leading the orc forces. He's still leading even during the Mumakil charge. And when Eowyn and Mary get dehorsed, so to speak, when they fall off their horse, a slightly injured Gothmog is, well, actually, he doesn't start slightly injured, more than he already is anyway. He's always sort of been gimpy. But Eowyn gets a good swing at him, and we have this whole Witch King situation play out, which is, we'll come right back to it. But after the Witch King situation plays out and Eowyn has her broken arm, which sort of mirrors Gothmog's gimpy arm, Gothmog, injured and angry that this woman not only tried to kill him, but succeeded in killing his peer, the Witch King, is coming after her. And there's a scene in the theatrical cut that you don't know is related to this, but is in there, which is when Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli are there. Aragorn and Gimli double team this orc and kill him, and that orc is Gothmog.
Really?
Yes, like there's a moment where Aragorn chops off the arm of this orc. His back is to the screen, and Gimli swipes at his throat. That orc is Gothmog on his way to try and kill Eowyn.
Oh, I never picked up on that.
Yeah, you wouldn't know in the theatrical cut. You just think, okay, Aragorn and Gimli tag team killed this orc, but it's a very important orc.
Interesting. Oh, there some of the cuts that they have for the extended are like I mean for the theatrical are really interesting.
Yeah,
And
well,
not
like,
necessarily always in a good way.
no, but like, I mean, sure, like he's not the ultimate important character, so if a character death has to be cut out, yeah, maybe Gothmog. But it is interesting, like he's leading the orcs at Osgiliath. He's leading the orcs through the whole siege of Gondor, and then after the charge of the Rohirrim in the theatrical cut, we don't see him ever again.
Mhm.
And the extended edition does bring a little closure by having a 3-part kill where Eowyn wounds, Aragorn wounds further, and Gimli finishes it. So that's what happened to Gothmog. But that's all around this battle. I think we have to get to a very, very important sequence of events involving Eowyn, where the Witch King swoops down into the battle and decides to take out the most important player on the field at the moment, which is Theoden. And this is another case where no horses were harmed in the making of this film. But I gotta say, the image of the fell beast just casually throwing Snowmane and Theoden with Snowmane landing on Theoden absolutely looks painful.
Oh, this whole sequence and scene is just like it's one I really enjoyed. You know what? Let me say something real quick here. I pause there so that we can edit this out. I'm gonna have to go really soon. Do you want to finish with this scene, or let me see? I'm trying to see where we're
Yeah, that
at
works.
here.
Because
Okay, because this kind of
it's not actually far from where I wanted to finish anyway.
Okay, perfect. So then, yeah, because we kind of have a good conclusion then with the Witch King. All right, so let me
Yeah,
my
we'll
camera
finish with
back.
Witch King dead. We won't get to the whole Theoden dying thing. That's where we'll
Okay.
pick up next episode.
Okay. All right, so I'll pause real quick here and then go back into where I was so you can edit that part out.
Sure.
So yeah, so this whole scene I really liked a lot because it's you have this kind of like heroic moment a little bit with Eowyn. These like he's rallying the troops. All right, come on, form up behind me, and then he just completely gets slapped away basically by the Witch King. And like you said, it's just like this painful looking little looking tumble basically. And the I don't know what the name of it, but that weird flying beast thing that he rides is just so creepy looking.
Yeah, it's literally just called a fell beast.
Oh,
There's like, that is the closest thing we have to a title for it.
oh, and it's like, yeah, because it's like this weird snake dragon weird thing, and and it's just like, and I just love how like it perches down and it's coming right over to get him, and then
It looks like it smells horrible too.
oh, it looks just evil. It just looks like evil as anything could get. It looks it,
Yeah.
and and it's so it just shows like how evil the Witch King is, that it's like it doesn't even like want to like fight Theoden. It just like wants his creature to like eat him basically.
Yeah.
Like,
and again, like the whole purpose of everything the armies of Mordor have been doing here is to beat into submission and demoralize as highly as possible. So having this beast eat the king in front of everyone is just another, yeah, we're gonna make this as painful as possible kind of move.
Oh, exactly. It's just horrible. And then we get to this fantastic moment.
Yeah,
Oh.
where Eowyn steps in and says, "I will kill you if you touch him."
Oh. It's another in a movie full of great entrances. It's just another great entrance.
Yes.
And what I kind of liked about this scene too was that in so many of these in action movies and everything, whether it's with a hero or a heroine, it's like they always show them as just being completely totally fearless. And and it was really kind of interesting how Peter Jackson chose not to have that, where it's like you can see that she's like completely terrified of this creature.
Who wouldn't be like nobody's blaming her for being a little shaken by this,
Mm-hmm.
and
because he's supposed to be like the Witch King. He's supposed to be like what, like 7 feet tall, 8 feet tall.
Yeah, he's pretty much the worst possible combatant to meet on that field. Like, I mean, if you're on the evil side, there's some contenders. I don't want to fight Gandalf. I don't want to fight Aragorn. I don't want to fight Legolas. I don't want to fight Gimli. Like none of the heroes I particularly care to fight. But if there's one I think I could take, it would be Eowyn. Mm-hmm. And then like, I mean, not counting hobbits, of course, but I tell you what, on the evil side, that I don't care who it is. Anyone's better than the Witch King.
It's so, yeah, it's like because he's the absolute top player, and
and I love that, like, he's just like totally talking, smack to her, and everything, and then she just like turns and just like beheads his fell beast.
In a very gross and lifelike way. Like it takes two swings.
Uh-huh.
Like,
It was
And
just
the-
like so great.
and that intake of breath, like when he's just mad that she's done this.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you what it reminds me of. In Batman v Superman, when the kryptonite starts to wear off,
Uh-huh.
and Batman's punching Superman and like slowly stops working and then kind of backs off and does this like, you know, like
You hear the
the-
clunk.
yeah, you can almost hear Bruce in his head going, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean that."
Uh-huh.
And like when the Witch King stands up and you hear this,
Mhm.
and he
Oh.
shows the mace, like there's this look on Eowyn's face that is exactly the same. I'm
Mhm.
sorry, I didn't mean that.
Because I mean that mace is ginormous, because
It
like
is.
the mace itself is like the size of her torso, basically.
It's
Like,
an utterly impractical weapon, but who cares?
uh-huh. Oh yeah, it's cool as hell, It's like,
Yeah, and also very metal.
oh, everything about the Witch King is metal and extra. It's like none of
Yes.
his armor is practical. It's
Yeah.
like,
The crown that's just sitting on an empty cavity.
yeah.
Like
It's,
that.
it reminds me, like, and I'm absolutely sure that probably they designed the character off of the Witch King was I think it was Darth Nihilus, the Lord of Hunger from the Old Republic.
Yeah.
He's basically just like a robes held together by the dark side.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, it's a very, very, yeah, like you said, everything is metal about the Witch King, but this flail is just exquisitely dangerous looking.
oh,
And he literally breaks the shield in one swing. Like Eowyn's shield
shattered.
and her arm is just destroyed in one swing. And yeah, that looks like it hurts. And
Mhm.
then he has to gloat in it.
Mhm. Oh yeah, and that's what I love about it too, is that he doesn't view her as a threat, or he doesn't know it's a her at that point. He doesn't view whoever this soldier is as a threat at all. He's like he's like a predator playing with his prey.
He probably finds it remarkable that it managed to kill his mount.
Mhm.
Like, oh, this guy, a little better than normal.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
But you're
like,
still not enough. Look, I mean, no man can kill me.
yeah, we have two fantastic lines right there. Like no man can kill me.
Yeah, and he says the die now thing because he's got her like by the throat,
Mhm.
picking her up, choking her out, and then Mary comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Unsung hero in this, by the way, because like
Mhm.
everybody remembers Eowyn stabbing the Witch King in the proverbial face,
Uh-huh.
but if not for Mary, she doesn't get this shot.
No, it's true. It's totally accurate. Him running in, like cutting his leg or some, or his robe, or
It's pretty
whatever
low.
it
Like
is.
he
Yeah.
gets him low.
Uh-huh.
And-
It's like whatever constitutes his leg, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And then the one liner where she takes off the helmet, "I am no man," and just stabs again, like proverbially in the face. Like she stabs at the cavity where the crown is supposedly held on.
It's like that scene is just so great because, like, like you said, we have everything about the Witch King is so extra and metal, and it was just great to see like her have this own dramatic moment, extra moment. She didn't have to pull the helmet off, do the hair sweep and everything, but it was great.
It's like if Arnold Schwarzenegger was a woman.
Yeah.
I am no man. Like
Uh-huh.
I could see an 80s action movie having that kind of a one-liner.
Oh.
And yet, like, it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel out of place completely.
No, it does not. you know, it works totally for the scene.
It does. And the effect of like the Witch King imploding, like
Oh,
the crinkling of armor as he slowly like pulls in on himself and then just kind of like poofs. Like
I feel like it was I feel like it was a creative decision of that they had, you know, when Sauron died the first time in the first movie, he, you know, exploded into this massive, like, you know, ball of light. And I feel like it was a creative decision to do the complete opposite with the Witch King.
well,
And it was
he does
interesting.
sort of poof out. Like he collapses in on himself and then he kind of poofs out. So he does sort of do the same thing. And then Sauron, as the Eye of Sauron, does the same thing later, where it kind of collapses in on itself and then bangs out, which is also a really beautiful shot. But it's like, I guess in this universe, when things that aren't supposed to die, that's how it does it. It's like this entity is beyond life and death, has just died. How do we make that visually appealing? And it's by a like implosion to explosion effect.
Oh. Because and I don't know a huge amount about the lore of the Lord of the Rings, but like, you know, with the Witch King being he's a wraith, isn't he?
Yeah. So
Yeah. Like what happens to him after he's like imploded, blown up?
so I do know lore thing here is that there was it wasn't even meant to be taken as a prophecy so much as a declaration. And I want to say it was an elf that said it, that in the war with Angmar, the Noldorim forged weapons specifically for the purpose of trying to kill these wraiths, especially the Witch King, who was really the big bad at the time. Noted that like look, no living man is gonna bring this thing down. Like that's just not gonna happen, you know. And it's kind of a despairing remark, right? And that's why Gandalf said, you know, the one no living man may kill. It's kind of a legend that's been around this guy for a while. And the question, because there's sort of an open question in the lore here. If Merry, whose dagger was made by the Noldorim for this purpose, and in the book it says like it cleaved his unknit sinews, I think is the term. So it's like a term saying like this dagger did something to make him vulnerable. Like if Merry does not stab the Witch King in the back the way he does Eowyn's sword even do anything? It's an open question, you know, like, and it is the fact that no man can kill him, is it because Eowyn is a woman that this criteria is met, or is it because Merry is a hobbit, or is it because of both?
That's interesting.
You know,
true, yeah, because no man, yeah, because technically neither of them are men.
Neither of them. No, one of them is a hobbit and the other is a woman. So, and look, obviously, if Merry doesn't stab him, she doesn't get the opportunity. But let's say it plays out differently, that she gets the opportunity. She stabs him. Does he die? Like those daggers, which were specifically made for the purpose of fighting the wraiths,
because he's in a weakened state after he strikes him.
Right. Is that what brings the opening, or is it if anyone happened to have been lucky enough to actually make that hit what they had managed to? It's an open question in the lore, but I think the answer to me is both. Like you need both.
No, yeah, I would definitely agree with that because I remember thinking that when I first saw it, that I thought like, oh wow, whatever he did to him, ended up like, weakening him because he wasn't really moving around that much. He like seemed kind of stunned almost.
Yeah, I mean, when you go thousands of years and nobody's ever even so much as pricked you, being stabbed, I imagine stings a bit.
Uh,
Oh, I forgot what pain was.
yeah.
But either way, like props to these two for taking down the most dangerous piece on the board. Two pawns took out the queen. Like
Mhm.
that's what happened here.
Oh, no, and it was the perfect ending for him too, because having Gandalf take him out or something like that, ends up just like reinforcing how powerful he is, and so having him, like you said, be taken out by two pawns is just a perfect ending.
Yeah, and also like Mary and Eowyn both need a win beyond just living, and like Eowyn's arc has been wanting to do what the men of her country do for the purpose it's downplayed seriously in the movies to the point where it's not really in the movies, but in the book it's actually she's suicidal. And this is her way of meeting that suicide. Like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to die like a hero, and
Taking
in the
out
movies,
father.
yeah, it's funny because Theoden is the same way. Theoden is also, I'm gonna die. This is how I'm gonna kill myself, and it's gonna be great, right? Like they both have the same character flaw, and he's just not recognizing that is apparently a family trait. But she is in the movie in a much more positive light, which is more, I need to contribute in the way the men are contributing. And this is that ultimate feminist victory where it's like, you guys told her she couldn't come along. You guys told her she should stay behind and watch the kingdom while the men go do the battle. And if she wasn't here, this battle could have gone different.
Stay back and make stew.
Clearly better at battle than stew. So
yeah. Oh.
Jeez. Leave Gimli at camp to make the stew.
Yeah.
I don't even know if he's good or not, but it can't be worse.
Can't be worse.
No, don't take Gimli off the table. He's also a phenomenal warrior. Like, but yeah, that concludes this part. When we come back, we will finish up with the Siege of Gondor, the Battle of Pelenor Fields, really, because none of the action is taking place in Minas Tirith at the moment. And then we'll head to the last leg of this journey, some of it which will involve chicken legs and orc inner conflict. And oh, we love orcs. But of course, we'll be back to finish The Return of the King in part 4 of our coverage. Thanks for joining us, Byron. Thank you for all you've done to make this episode special. Luckily, we did all our plugs at the beginning, so just join us next time for Return of the King part 4, and hopefully the conclusion of this very long scene-by-scene coverage of Lord of the Rings. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, leave a comment. If you've been watching all these for this long, you have my sincere thanks.